Government receives its latest deficit checkup today, and the prognosis could be downright frightening. Bloomberg's chief Washington correspondent Peter Cook is down in D.C., and he takes a look ahead for us. Peter.
A daunting picture, perhaps, Eric. The Congressional Budget Office's latest assessment of the deficit likely to paint a somewhat scary picture. The question is how scary. Last March, the CBO said the deficit this fiscal year would hit $1.37 trillion and then start to decline as the Bush tax cuts expire before rising again because of retiring baby boomers and skyrocketing interest payments on the federal debt. Former CBO Director Doug Holtz-Aiken, I spoke with him earlier. He says don't expect big changes in the forecast. There's still some key numbers to watch for today.
I think you want to look for a couple of things. Number one, you want to look at any changes to the economic outlook. CBO has been more pessimistic than both the blue chip and the administration. Part of that's because they're obligated to pretend that the tax cuts are going to sunset, so they got a big tax increase in their forecast. But it will be interesting to see if they've marked it further up or down. My guess is it won't change too much.
They were at 2.1% for the full year, the fiscal year 2010, or at least Q4 to Q4 back in January. Do you think that number might come down?
I don't think they'll mark down. Some people were hoping they'd mark up. I expect it to be relatively unchanged. They had the real question is, will they continue to show very rapid growth in the years 3, 4, 5? They actually had the unemployment rate coming down faster than the administration does. Those are things I'm looking for in terms of the overall shape of the economic recovery. The second big set of items is going to be what will they do with the health care bill? They scored it as reducing the deficit for purposes of the legislation, but they've since said probably going to raise national health care spending. So what ends up being the net impact on their forecast? And a little-known fact is they were obligated to continue to use an outdated forecast for all their scoring during the legislation. This is the first time we will see the health care bill's cost on their modern economics and modern assumptions about Medicare. It'll be interesting.
Republicans will be honing in on that health care number. Two other things to look for in today's report. CBO should update its price tag for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and we should also get a separate forecast for what the deficit would look like if the Bush tax cuts are extended in full. Eric, you'll be sure Democrats will be looking at that number.
Peter, a key question for you. Are there any differences between the way that the CBO is looking at the deficit versus the way the White House is looking at the deficit?
Well, because they assume all the Bush tax cuts expire, the CBO is required to do that because they have to look at the law of the land. It is actually more optimistic, at least in the short term. The White House back in July said the fiscal year deficit would be $1.47 trillion. Again, the CBO saying back in March $1.37. The difference there, again, is the Bush tax cuts, but the long-term projections both, again, daunting, showing those numbers starting to rise again towards the end of the